Let's wrap up this session with some key points, important reminders, resources, and support information. But first, let's spend a few minutes talking about the suggested milestones for end-of-year 1 and 2. So sometimes it is difficult to determine how to pace yourself through the CALPADS work because the deadlines start off so far in advance. On this slide and the next, we have provided a sequence of suggested milestones that you can use to break up the work and use as a checklist. And you should adjust the dates based on staff availability and other factors and other projects that you have going on at the same time during these end-of-year submissions. This year, the milestone slide is a little bit unique because it's not just one, but we have two, one for end-of-year 1 and another one for end-of-year 2. And the reason for that is because the dates are different for these two submissions now. So let's start with end-of-year 1. From now until beginning of May, you should focus on your data population in your local student information system. And as soon as you're done with that, parallel to your data population, you can start submitting your files in CALPADS. So the milestone for file submission and posting your files and cleaning up your IVRs, which are your input validation rules, errors, is to complete that by June 19th. And after that, focus on your certification and data discrepancy errors and review your snapshot reports also during this time frame and update records as needed. So you want to make sure that by June 26th, you have 0 data discrepancies and certification fatal errors. That will allow you time to start reviewing your reports more thoroughly. So from June 27 until July 10th, this is the time to send your certification reports to your local data stewards, your site leaders and administrators for them to review and approve. If you have these reports earlier, you can send it to them earlier than June 26th, obviously. But just do expect that they may come back and give you feedback and identify discrepancies on those reports, right? So that's why then you have this other time frame in here between July 11th and 17th to address those discrepancies, meaning updating additional data in CALPADS, and then finally LEA approving those reports by the July 17th deadline. Now, there is a short amendment window, which is from July 18th until end of July. And by that time, CELPA approval is required and any other minor amendments that you may make to your data. So this is again a reminder that the 0 errors milestone date is June 26th for end of year. Please make a note of that. This is the suggested milestones for end of year 2. Again, by May 5th, you want to complete your data population and start submitting your files. By beginning of July, you should have all of your files uploaded. And then after that, work on resolving your certification and data discrepancy errors. And so by beginning of August 3rd, you should have 0 fatal errors and certification errors, right? Now, after that, you want to submit your reports to your site leaders and data stewards and administrators for them to approve, and it goes through the same process. They may come back with some discrepancies that they have identified, and you need to make a few more updates, and you want to get your data approved by August 17th. That is the final certification deadline. And notice that end of year 2 doesn't have an amendment window. And so 8/17 is your final deadline. You want to get your data LEA approved by that date. So just want to note in here that the graduate cutoff date for the 4-year adjusted cohort graduation rate remains August 15th. And students must have a graduate exit date by August 15th to be included as a graduate in 2025, 2026. So the end of year 2 certification deadline and the ACGR pull date are the same now, which is Monday, August 17th, 2026. So students who graduate after August 15th of this year will not be included as graduates in the 4-year ACGR for this year, but will be counted as 5th-year graduates in 2026 and 2027. So now we will take a little time and talk about some strategies for your end of year submissions. And you may have your own internal strategies within your LEA as well, but this is just to provide some guidance. So before even establishing your strategies, these are some of the EOY considerations, things to consider prior to submitting and certifying your end of year submissions. There are obviously personal considerations, how comfortable you are with these submissions and the workload, as well as any summer breaks or vacations that you may have planned. And also there are local factors that will affect your submissions as well. These are availability of school site staff and district personnel, as well as other internal deadlines you may have for other projects. And also priority of the data that you submit. There are specific fundings that may affect your LEA, such as Perkins funding data, public data statistics, or cohort results that you may provide priority to. Additional potential reporting milestones that will affect your submission as well. When is the last day for your new enrollments? When our final grades are available, last day of school. Obviously, these factors will affect your end of year submissions. And lastly, the CALPADS deadlines, benefits and consequences of meeting the initial end of year deadline and the min window deadline, which we have talked in detail about earlier. So the first suggested strategy is to adopt ongoing submission and review of your data. This includes monthly incident reporting. The CDE recommends submitting your data, including restraint and seclusion, at least once a month throughout the year. This avoids an EOY logjam and ensures that data is reviewed by site administrators before they leave for summer break. There are additional suggestions and guidance in Flash 314, and a link to that Flash is provided in the notes of this slide. And also resolve data discrepancies year-round. So use the data discrepancy UI to resolve errors as data is submitted. Resolving these prior to May 5th, which is the opening of the EOY window, gives you more time for report reconciliation. And lastly, frequently compare local student information system data against CALPADS real-time reports or ODS reports to ensure they match well before certification deadline. The second strategy is to plan backward from the final deadlines. So create a local milestone calendar. Use a staggered backwards approach starting from the final deadlines for 2025, 2026. End of year 1 final deadline is July 31st, and end of year 2 final deadline is August 17th. Set early targets for 0 errors. Strive to be free of fatal errors for end of year 1 by June 26th and end of year 2 by August 3rd. This provides a buffer for a thorough report review. And you may have internal site deadlines for other projects as well. So set dates, for example, mid-July for site leaders to review and approve their specific reports before the LEA certifier provides final approval. And you would want to manage your staff availability and summer schedules, which is an important part of your EOY submission. You want to perform pre-summer audits, conduct local special education data system audits, and review discipline absenteeism reports before school ends or immediately after school ends. Identify your reviewers for end of year. Make sure that key staff, such as your data administrators and accountability coordinators, are available during the July and August windows for final error resolution. SELPA coordination is very important as well because end of year one now includes all special education data. LEAs should approve by the July 17 initial deadline to give SELPAs sufficient time to review and approve before the July 31st final deadline. So some additional submission strategies includes balancing graduation data. Take advantage of the EOY2 flexibility. The shift of 1-year graduate and completer data into end of year 2 with an August 17 deadline provides more time than previous years to process summer graduates and store final grades in your student information system. Focus on end of year first. Prioritize seat time data, which includes your absenteeism, cumulative enrollment, and incident counts for the earlier July 31st deadline. For your summer graduate procedures for students completing requirements by August 15, continue using one-day enrollment exit records with the E230 exit code and completion status of 100 to ensure they are captured in the August 17 cohort poll. Additional guidance and information about this is in Flash 303, and a link is provided in the notes of this slide. So on this slide, there are additional cohort readiness and considerations for you to review. These are the questions that you should start asking now if you haven't already. Will you be the person handling the cohort processing? If you are, have you reviewed the cohort training videos, or are you planning to? Are you familiar with that process? Have you downloaded the cohort checklist? It is available in the user manual. It's actually part of the end of year checklist. There's an additional tab in there related to cohort tasks. Do you have a plan to work on cohort parallel to EOY? And do you need input or assistance from other staff from your LEA? And if so, are you aware of their summer schedule and will they be available? So you need to have that coordination with those folks as well. Here are some key points and reminders to take away with you. The data and end of year is reflective of the entire academic year. You would want to review your EOY changes internally with other staff as needed. It will greatly benefit you to clear certification and certification data discrepancies by June 26th for end of year 1 and August 3rd for end of year 2 to ensure reports are checked for accuracy before they're approved. Use the EOY checklist to plan for and meet submission milestones and deadlines. LEAs should plan to certify all EOY submissions by the submission window deadline. Amendment window should only be used for minor updates and corrections to data. And attend the CALPADS Q&A sessions that happen every Wednesday afternoon at 3 p.m. when feasible. You may post questions during that session or just listen as other LEAs submit their questions, and answers are provided by our data analysts here at Figmat CSIS, as well as folks from CDE. So the last pointer here is to communicate, collaborate, and coordinate internally earlier on. And also don't forget your CELPAs to communicate and coordinate with those folks as well, as they will be doing the final CELPA approval for some of your special ed reports, and that's very important. So here are some important resources related to end-of-year reporting. On the CSIS website, we have the CSIS training registration page where you can register for live webinars, as well as the resources page where you can download all the PowerPoints and training material related to these submissions. We also have the CSIS YouTube channel where we post the recordings of all the courses that we offer. We try to get those posted prior to the live sessions being offered. And there is a references page in the user manual where all the documentations that we reference during these trainings, they're all posted, the latest versions of them. And lastly, there's the systems documentation page on the California Department of Education's website. Reference documents are also posted there. So how do you get help? The best and most efficient way is through the web form. You just fill out that form, submit it. It gets into our ticketing system, and an agent gets assigned to your ticket, and they respond to it. There is also a support email where you can send support requests, and that also gets into our ticketing system, and an agent gets assigned to it. We do have a phone number. If you call that number, it goes straight into a voicemail. It takes a little bit longer for someone to manually transcribe the content of that voicemail into a ticket and then get an agent assigned to it. But we do recommend using the web form or the email. There are a couple of listservs as well. The CSIS listserv is mostly for LEAs to communicate amongst each other, for them to ask for guidance and help with various student information systems, etc. But there's also a one-way listserv from the CALPADS team where all the important communications as well as flashes are communicated through that listserv to the field. And I want to thank you for attending this training, and have a great day.